this has been something major that's going in the history books for sure. And to have spent the last year covering this, it's something that I'm never going to forget.
It's definitely been a life-changing experience, I would say, as a journalist going through this pandemic here in New Orleans.
This has actually taken a huge toll on my mental health. And then not only that, but then there was this whole conversation of like racial injustice happening in our country, right? And as a person of color, that on top of like this pandemic, it's been a lot. And you're just trying to survive like everyone else. It's been pretty crazy. I think as a journalist, you go into every story obviously wanting to put the most into it, but this is something that's also affecting me. This is also impacting my family. And so I think that mentally, this has actually taken a huge toll. I mean, none of us thought, when I left to go home and not go back to the office in March, I was like, this will be over in like 2 months. And it wasn't. Most days, if I can just wake up and get myself ready, I feel like that's an accomplishment because everything we're doing is not normal. It's also impacting you. This is also your city, your country, your people also being dramatically impacted by this virus. And so to see that, and for myself as a Latina, but also covering like the Navajo Nation, seeing communities of color being disproportionately affected by this pandemic has been really tough.
And we're like an island, the Navajo Nation. So of course, if you have record-breaking numbers all around us, it will come in to that nation or that area. And that's what's happening today.
From March, I've been covering the Navajo Nation pretty consistently. You're wanting to give them a voice and give them a platform, but also there is this virus and you're being impacted as well, but also you're seeing your own people being impacted at way higher rates. And I don't feel like enough coverage is being done on those communities.
We're in need. We need help, and we're not getting it.
As a journalist, I want my community to know that I am here to cover them. I am here to give them a voice. But it's hard because I feel like when you look specifically at the Navajo Nation, which are the country's first people, these are people who've always, unfortunately, lived in third world conditions. But now what did this pandemic do? Well, it highlighted that, right? Like it's highlighting these racial injustices. I mean, this is pretty much historical trauma. And that historical trauma that these communities have experienced is now being highlighted on a grander span. Even when you look at the vaccine now, I think because of the historical things that have happened in this country, there's a lot of mistrust for healthcare workers who even work on the reservation. And I think just in general, there's mistrust amongst the government, unfortunately, and healthcare because of the historical traumas or the experimental events that have happened on these communities before. The one thing that I consistently hear is just, again, like the government, like murdered and massacred our people. Like, how are we supposed to trust this government that did these things to natives?
The reason why we did it was to bring confidence to the vaccine. And I know people were saying, well, we're not going to take it unless you take it, President. Okay, I took it.
It's growing that relationship. It's building that foundation with these communities that these people need, right? And so I think that, when we look at the Navajo Nation, I've come to realize that one of the difficult things for Native doctors is that extra layer of them having to do the work to remind their people that, like, yes, I am a doctor and I'm Navajo, but I'm here to help you and I'm not here to like hurt you. To be able to cover this community to the extent we were able to cover it and to highlight some of the positives, to highlight, when they were able to curb the spread of the virus, to when they got their first vaccines. It's been an honor. I mean, one of the biggest honors of my life.
We have gotten hit hard by this pandemic, and we're looking forward to seeing the numbers decrease as we get more and more of our Navajo citizens vaccinated.
What I'm going to remember is the relationship that I built with this nation of our country. And I think that when covering any community, whether it's the Black community, the Latino community, the Asian community, you have to build trust in these communities. And looking back on this, what I'm going to take away is that relationship that I built with the Navajo Nation and how they trusted me. And I was able to give justice to this community. And not only that, but shine light on the positives of this community as well. I am happy knowing that I did what I could to bring change to these areas. Looking back now at my last 2.5 years, it's just one of the biggest honors of my life was being able to cover the nation this closely. And not only that, but to have them accept me and invite me in.
We've done 15 tests total. 14 of those have come back negative. This obviously being the only one that came back positive.
My earliest memory of the pandemic, or when COVID was starting to become real, I was at the state capitol in Baton Rouge, and it was the first COVID case that had been confirmed. And I had been hearing that there was a COVID case in our area. So I had remember kind of finding the press secretary to confirm this information. And in fact, it was in our area. And then here we are in 2021. Who would have imagined the amount of deaths and cases that have been across the world? Some of the stories that I told, or some of the people that I met, it was mind-boggling. I remember we were about midway through the pandemic, a couple months in, and there was a mother and her 3 sons all died. They had their services together and all of them tested positive for COVID. Those were the stories that I thought were crucial, involving people that had experienced firsthand the devastation of COVID-19. I can think of 3 to 4 husband and wives that have passed away because of COVID. So yeah, it is challenging, but I think you're here to show that this is a reality that so many people are dealing with, and that's your job to effectively communicate that to the public. And there's so much heartbreak, but there is a little bit of hope. While there has been so many deaths, there has been a lot of survivors, thousands and thousands of survivors. So it is important to tell those stories. A story that really moved me a lot was the story involving a 22-year-old girl who had special needs and accomplished her dream of graduating high school.
Oh no!
Asia Garrison, all smiles and full of joy.
She, despite all of this, was so positive. There was no graduation. It was like a drive-through thing. And so many kids were disappointed, but her story of being 22 years old and being able to accomplish her dream was pretty incredible.
Never giving up, having faith, and when times get hard, keep the ones you love most close to your heart.
I got so many comments and texts from people that it was something that they needed. It lifted them up in the middle of this pandemic. Stories like that, I think, really were also important too. We've also done a lot of stories about music. The heartbeat of New Orleans is music. And there's been multiple musicians that I've spoken to that have had to get on unemployment or try to get on unemployment. It's not the same.
Working out of my savings now. I am on unemployment, but it's like that only goes so far. And it's gonna apparently end soon.
So there's no place for them to really perform how they used to. So they're struggling all across America, but here in New Orleans, they've been hit very hard. I think, you have to be optimistic because right now that's all we can be, but I think it'll depend on vaccinations and how truly effective they are, and if the federal government and local governments are able to roll them out effectively. You've got to remain hopeful and positive.
The 2 testing sites in Palm Beach County have reopened their phone lines this morning to begin scheduling appointments.
At first, when the pandemic started, we knew it was a big story. And as a journalist, most people know when big stories happen, you're covering it every day. But this has been a nonstop thing for over a year now. So as the days went on, the weeks went on, and we had a new, different COVID story every day, I knew that this was huge. I knew that this was going to be something major in my career, and also obviously happening in our country. As a journalist, you're writing part of history, and you get to tell the stories that are happening as they happen. One of the most important things that I feel that I have covered so far through the process has been the first few vaccines.
About 2,400 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine will be administered between today and tomorrow here at the Mid-Florida Credit Union Event Center in Port St. Lucie.
When we first started to get those doses within the counties that we cover, I got the opportunity to go to different hospitals and see them administer those vaccines to the doctors and the nurses and the staff, which were a priority in our state here in Florida. But I just felt like that was such an honor and a neat thing to be a part of. And it really makes you appreciate your job, regardless of all these things that are going on. Those are important topics to cover and information that is necessary to, provide for the public. I'm asthmatic, and when I do get sick, a small cold typically really affects me. So I knew that if I got COVID, it wouldn't be good for me. So I was super careful. But I remember it was a Friday, right before 4th of July weekend. I thought I had allergies. It was a work day. By the end of the day, I started to feel really tired. I work morning shifts, so I thought, okay, well, maybe I just had a long day. By the time I woke up Saturday morning, my whole body just ached and hurt. I've never felt like that before. Sometimes people describe it as the flu with the body aches. I've had the flu before. This was a totally different feeling. When I say body aches, I mean your body just aches. It was so hard for me to get out of bed. And I knew in that moment that I had it. I started to get a fever that Saturday night, and I called my boss and I let her know right away. I was quarantined immediately. The people that I was around, I obviously notified them right away. Luckily, nobody around me got it except me, but it was hard. After the fever, the body aches, I had trouble breathing. There were nights where I almost thought that, I'm like, Josie, maybe you're having a panic attack, because I would wake up in the middle of the night gasping for air. I ended up getting an oximeter reader for my finger, and my levels were pretty low. So I ended up going to the hospital, and I stayed there for a little. They monitored me. And when I came back home, I think I just realized how lucky I was that even what I got wasn't as bad as what some people are experiencing. The biggest long-term symptom that I've had is just a lot of tiredness, like 2 months after, 3 months after. You just felt like you ran a marathon. That's the best way I can describe it, is you just feel like you ran 5 miles. I thought that the chest pain that I was having was just residual lung aches, maybe from all of the issues that I had, because I had a lot of coughing, trouble breathing. On the bright side, being a journalist who got COVID and got it as bad as I got it, again, other people have had it worse, but I see things differently now. And when I go into my stories and I hear other people's experiences, I think that I have a lot more compassion for people and a lot more understanding for what they're going through.
In a time when the events taking place across our country can feel quite heavy, it's moments like this that are worth celebrating.
And there are positive stories that we do get to cover. And the most recent one that I covered is Boca Regional Hospital released their 1,000th COVID patient from the ICU, which was a huge step for them. There are big things that happen all the time, but this has been something major that's going in the history books for sure. And to have spent the last year covering this, it's something that I'm never going to forget. I know it's something I'm probably one day going to be sharing with my kids. And it's been an honor to also be able to help people. What I do every day is try to get all of the accurate information to inform the public. And so during this time, it has been so important to be able to do that. And I know it's something that I will never forget, to have been a part of all of it and to help the people in my community.
Reporting in Albuquerque, Marissa Armas, KOAT Action 7 News.
Reporting, I'm Aubrey Killian, WDSU News.
Reporting in Jupiter, Josie Carbonari, WPBF 25 News.